Hello, this is my interview assignment, and I am interviewing Kalita Armstrong, special education teacher.
Hello.
How was reading promoted in your childhood home?
Well, it was a lot different time then, and we did have a central library, but we didn't go very often. My mom ordered books from like companies, and they would come, and we were really interested in like the Dr. Seuss series was at my house. And also, there was a Disney series that came. And then we also listened to these records that had pamphlet books with them that came. And so I liked those the best because then if I didn't know the words or something, I could follow along and the person on there would tell me what they were saying. And I remember especially on sick days, I was not allowed to watch television or anything, but I could see all the books and I could read all of the records that went along with it. And it kind of kept me company and I really liked it.
That's very cool. How was language incorporated in your life growing up, and how many languages do you speak?
Well, I only speak one language, but I did take a couple years of Spanish, but I really just know words. That I couldn't speak in sentences or anything. And then when we were older and I had children, we did do a lot of different things, and summers with signing. And I do find that now that I'm older, I understand more of all the slang because my mom grew up in the country. And so we used a lot of different words that I didn't really even know. They were different until I saw people's reaction that they didn't use the same kind of language that I used. And so it was funny to see their expressions on their faces when I would say funny words that they would look at like, what is she saying? Like I would leave out letters, or kind of like what you would sound like a country kind of slang that goes along with the words.
What's an example of one?
Well, I usually say, you want to go get a sandwich instead of, I know that it's sandwich, but my kids always make fun of me. Or if I don't say the days of the week, I leave out the A in Sunday, but I say stuff like Sunday or something. And so, yeah, so it really does affect the way your dialect is and how people perceive you. And so it was something that I had to, in public, remember, say it differently,
Yes.
So.
Would you describe your path to literacy and language acquisition as pleasant or unpleasant?
I always had a difficult problem reading. Education wasn't a high priority in our household. And so it was more work ethic. My parents owned a motel. And along with that, though, the literacy of language came. We had to learn how to speak on the phone. We had to learn how to deal with different customers coming in. Even at an early age, at 5th and 6th grade, I had to know how to talk differently and speak differently and watch and learn what they were doing so that then I could copy them. And so I find that might have not been book literacy, but it was the language literacy that was used in our household. So we knew the appropriate way to speak to people, the appropriate way to answer a telephone. So it was more along those lines instead of book learning. But I think from my childhood on, then I had a difficult time until I got into college, knowing what kind of learner I was and how I was going to use my listening skills that I had compared to then my reading skills that I had, and had to work on that.
I understand. What's the first book you remember reading?
Well, one of the first books I remember having read to me is this book that was about this little squirrel my sister would read, and I would ask her to read it all the time. But the book I remember the most reading, they were Dr. Seuss. It was Old Hat, New Hat. It was Green Eggs and Ham. It was My Nest is Best. I can't remember the name of that one, but it's something close to that. And I would sing it to myself and make up little sounds and noises.
Yep. I think the book is called My Nest is Best. Did you enjoy reading as a child? And if so, as a kid, what did you read? Yeah, I know you said a few, but I meant what's the style of book?
Well, as a child, I didn't have a diverse collection of books until my sister, who was older than me, could read to me. And then the first books I remember as being like, oh, please let me hear the stories, was Judy Blume. And my sister was really into it. So she would, before I went to bed, we would get in her bed and we'd cuddle up, and she would read Judy Blume books to
Or
me.
is that like Tales of the Fourth Grade Nothing? Is that Judy Blume?
Judy Blume, though, the ones I read were Are You There, God It's Me, Margaret. Those type of along the storylines, because my sister's about 5 years older than me, but I still enjoyed hearing her read them, and it made me like, oh, please read it to me tonight.
Aww.
So that was a great experience with her.
Growing up, what subject in school were you most interested in or connected to?
Well, it happened in third grade, and her name was Mrs. Whitty, and it was block learning then. I don't know what they would do now, but she was my language arts teacher, and it wasn't so much that I enjoyed the material, it's that I just remember her being so kind and so loving and so nice to all of us, that I just remember being like, it was my first experience of, oh, maybe I could do that, or maybe I want to do that. And she was kind to all the kids, and so I felt
teacher changes everything.
Changes everything. Yeah.
What does literacy mean to you based on your experiences or culture? Do you want me to list some literacies to you?
Yeah, why don't you do that?
Okay. There's the agricultural literacy, computer literacy. I have a whole bunch of them.
Okay.
Critical literacy, that one I found very interesting. Cultural literacy, ecological literacy, emotional literacy, financial, functional, health, informational, media, mental health, and then there's a health as well. And I have all the definitions of them on here.
Okay, well, let me hear the question again now, that I understand some of what that question might mean.
Okay. What does literacy mean to you based on your experiences and culture?
Okay, well, I guess you're talking about literacy as learning in different ways of the understanding of different things. I think it depending on what period of my life that you were talking about. Early on, it was more of through school or through home were quite different. My school was to really please or to my teacher or to be in front of my peers was different. And then my parents had a whole different view. So I think that my parents were more influential. So mine was more like learning kind of like through economics. They were very into doing good work, doing a good job, having a good work ethic, doing things right, whatever it would be that we would have to do. Our motel had something to do with, let's just say, collecting the money and depositing the money and doing the yard work, the snow work, the fall work. And then we also we didn't have maids, we were the maids. And so we learned through doing, you know, the actual rooms and the laundry and the responsibility that goes along with that. So I think most of my learning until I left home was more the learning of economics and how to live in the world and be.
Mm-hmm. How would you explain your cultural literacy?
Well, I had a father who did graduate high school, but he had a great difficulty in reading and writing. Even though he was highly intelligent, he struggled. And back in his day, you know, he got switched to a different school, and then they passed him and he graduated. And then my mother's background was she did get pregnant, and so she, even though how smart she was, she stopped school as a junior. And so culturally, bringing that to the table for my parents, there wasn't a large emphasis on book learning because they were so successful. My mom's so hardworking. My dad had great communication skills, and so he became a salesman. She was so hardworking. She worked nights and had 4 children, and then they've saved enough money to have a hotel. So my cultural background is didn't put education high, and so it's surprising that then I went to college. But I guess I saw how well they did, and I wanted to do well, and I had people around me that were going to college, and so I think that put forth the effort for me then to put education first, and knew that that meant I was going to be able to succeed and get a job.
What forms of literacy do you often use now? As the list I read before, reading, writing, numerical, scientific.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but I was a special ed teacher, and now I homeschooled all my children. And so my whole existence is wrapped around reading and writing. And we read every day. We do school every day. I spend at least like 4 or 5 hours every day with doing something along the line of either reading stories, listening to documentaries, watching something that has to do with history, and then teaching math. So it might not be a normal situation from another family, because we do have education throughout the whole entire day with literacy, reading, and math. So, but then after, I guess you can say, when everybody's at home, you would think that would change, but we have 2 in college and 1 in high school, and then 1 being homeschooled. So it kind of incorporates all of our evenings too, with a really focusing on the studies. So we fall in that range.
How did you promote literacy as a grandparent, parent, aunt, uncle, or teacher?
Okay.
Well, yeah.
Well, it's not only, I don't know if it was because I didn't have any when I was little, but I fell in love with reading, and I fell in love with books, and I guess I worked so hard at it that I ended up falling in love with children's literature at an older age, because I didn't have it as a younger age. And so as a mother, I wanted to instill the love of reading and the love of the storytelling. And so we always had books. We always had books available. We always read together out loud. And I tried to make it part of our daily living that we had in our household.
Well, those are all the questions I have for you. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
Okay, well, you're welcome. Thank you very much for listening to my stories.
Bye.